Welcome to this online event here at the Danish Foreign Policy Society. My name is Charlotte Flint-Petersen. I'm the director of the Danish Foreign Policy Society, and I'll be the host of this meeting today. Today, we are so lucky and fortunate to have a very fantastic panel who will be discussing the situation in Belarus as we stand, and also the implications for the larger European neighborhood. So I'm very pleased to welcome the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Lithuania, Linas Linkevičius, and the State Minister and Undersecretary for Security, Americas, Asia and Eastern Policy of Poland, Marcin Przydacz. Yeah, and Lars Bømøller, the Director of the European Neighbourhood Department at the Danish Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and Mrs. Hanna Liubakova, who is an analyst and working for Team Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, the legitimate elected president of Belarus. So with these words, I'd like to say welcome to you all. And first of all, I'll pass on the word to the Foreign Minister of Lithuania, Mr. Linas Linkevičius.
Thank you for inviting. Good to have this discussion. Definitely it depends how deep we're going to analyze the situation, but for me it looks a bit sad because more than 2 months after stolen elections, not much changes. Not in the deeds, but even in the rhetoric. And I'm always saying that's kind of stalemate situation from the glance of outgoing leadership, first of all, because people are surprisingly courageous and still active, still protesting on the streets in spite of intimidations, cruelty, brutality, and put into the custody, and that's all other reasons. So on the other hand, international pressure could be bigger, in my understanding. It took some time until we agreed on some kind of sanctions, which are really not a terribly big number of the people listed. Comparing with the period after 2010, it's much less, and took time until we agreed to put Lukashenko on that list. It's also showing that we are definitely doing not enough. Also, I would like to say that sanctions not all we can do. Sanctions, it's something that to show that those who committed, possibly crimes committed, were not just violations of human rights, so they must be kept accountable. But we also should focus on the tasks how to support people in need, those victims of repressions, physical victims, economic victims, which is not so easy to do, which you cannot, so to say, channel resources or support to the regime. This is obvious. It's also not so easy to finance directly non-governmental organizations, civil society, but we have to find a way how to do that. And also, as I said, support those who need and maybe need some refuge, what we are doing in Lithuania and some other countries, issuing visas for so-called humanitarian reasons, simplified procedures, trying to provide shelter to those who really exposed to the danger. I have to say it was also before these events, not just after. It was kind of tradition. We're trying to do our best, not intervening or not meddling into the domestic affairs, what is very important to note. Because opposition acts on their own and they're making their own statements, including Svetlana, who is in Vilnius, as we know, and also trying to be as active as she can do. But we really can help logistically, we can help to provide protection, and we're going to proceed. So in short, this is the picture, which is a bit gloomy because, as I said, time is not on our side. The outgoing regime would like to save that time, trying to invent some procedures of constitutional reforms, trying even to, it's kind of sarcastic, you know, to have this dialogue in prison with opposition. Looks not very convincing to international community. So trying to save time, and they believe that winter is coming, people being scared, and maybe will be less on the streets, and maybe international community will say, look, something happened, we do not agree, but you know, this is unavoidable kind of new normal. That would be the worst outcome, I believe, morally, politically, practically. So let's share our views. Let's think what we can do more. nationally and also collectively.
And if I may ask Mr. Foreign Minister Linkevičius, what do you think we should do? How should we engage more with the, how should the EU and how should Lithuania, and what are you thinking of doing at the moment?
Everything we're doing, we should do more. It means more sanctions. Lists should be more exhausted, of course, more expanded, I would say. Also very clear messages to outgoing leadership not to think about options to stay on power, because they believe they are counting on that. They believe that they will be received as kind of legitimate leaders anyway. This is not the case. So de facto they are leaders. De facto they are in control of power structures, and it's very important. But they should understand that the only outcome would be new elections, recognized by the international community, with the national observers, recognized by people of Belarus, and that's the only way to go. Also should be a very strong message to Russia, because this country is always very important, and unfortunately managing the situation through creating conflicts, not managing conflict, but creating conflicts, and through that situation trying to influence. So this is not the exception. And the role of Russia will be very important until Russia, until now, supports this compromised leadership. And I don't know, they are calculating, probably they have more options on the table, but they believe all options for them are bad. But this is maybe better, which is, I believe, also not quite reasonable. They are making damage also for future relations between nations, I would say, because these people in Belarus, those other colleagues who are taking part in this discussion, maybe they have another view, but I believe they are not anti-Russian, so to say. They're not against Russia. And although these opposition new faces we can see, they're also not against Russia. But if Russia will continue to support this compromised outgoing leadership, they will damage this feeling and relations. That would be a long strategic mistake, I believe, in the future. So we have to, those who are able to influence Russia, to make sure that this is also option for them to speak for new elections and to allow Belarusian people to elect those leaders they would like to. And that would be maybe least we can do at the moment.
So should EU reach out to Russia? Should you, as a foreign minister of Lithuania, should you reach out to Russia in order to find find a common solution in terms of, you could say, guarantees, or what do you suggest in that direction?
Yeah, including that, definitely, since we are not able to reach out to Belarusian de facto leadership, because there was a number of efforts to mediate, to facilitate, to encourage dialogue, and they were suggested by international organizations collectively, and also some leaders tried to call, but was not possible, so they're rejecting all kind of dialogue so far. But Russians, they can get the messages, so to say, and especially countries like Germany, like France, I believe they really can make some difference here. So with some kind of doubtful maybe expectations, but nevertheless these efforts are worthwhile. They have to be used. We have to do the utmost in order to influence the situation, because so far, as I said, it's stalemate. It's kind of, frozen, nothing happening, and the time is not on the side of people who are already exhausted, and they really need some glimpse, some hope, and that's important to note.
But how about for those who say that the what's going on in Belarus is actually an example of to the people of Russia, that it's not so much the fact that it's Lukashenko, but it's just the fact that it's a people uprising that is actually the threatening thing to Russia?
You're right. Uprising of people is not comfortable for Kremlin, and be it in Belarus, be it elsewhere. We know how sensitive it was taken when these revolutions, so-called revolutions, took place in Ukraine, for instance, in Georgia. This is not revolution here in this regard, but nevertheless, it's appraisal, and these popular leaders are not very comfortable. So they believe it shouldn't be the case. So it's my assumption. That's why they are simply supporting this outgoing leadership, because they believe that if they will do otherwise, So they will lose initiative and they will show weakness. And that would be a message also back home, as you said, back home, which is also not easy going, as we know, because events are in Far East, not only in St. Petersburg or Moscow, in Buryatia, other places. And that would be taken as a weakness of leadership, and they believe that would be a bad sign. So that's why one of the logical reasons why they are supporting outgoing leadership. But nevertheless, having said this, I still believe that they should rethink this tactics, because it's really quite detrimental by all means. And by the way, creating any stability, which is also not good. I'm not talking political, moral as factors, but also economic factors, which is a big problem. And countries on the bankruptcy, this is also quite clear. The lack of hard currency, they cannot act internationally. And whatever they are doing now, that will be really quite big damage even more. So if Russia expects to continue the partnership with the country and continue to implement this two-state union agreement, by the way, it's another problem. We all saying that this country de facto already integrated very much, but now I'm afraid that will be accomplished, and maybe nominally Belarus will remain as independent, but de facto that will be nothing left, and that's also quite lamentable. But this is reality. And these things are happening because of the deeds of outgoing leadership. Nobody can be blamed here. Nobody from outside did anything. They did to their own people what they did, and this is really quite sad. So having said this, let's take into account all possible leverages we can use, although they are limited, but it's not yet exhausted yet.
Thank you. I'll just ask you a final question before I pass on the word to the State Minister. What do you think, now we are here together, Poland, Denmark, Lithuania, what can we do from a sort of a neighbor perspective, from Danish perspective, from the Baltic perspective, from Polish perspective? So what are the options from this small group of people, but all EU members?
I would mention one more factor, which is, I will not repeat what I said. We have to do everything, but to do more, to do deeper, to be stronger. But we also should have in mind the vision, ourselves, and also to provide vision to the people. These people really need to have some kind of strategy, After changes will come, they have to know what kind of options will they face. Integration into Europe. They are Europeans. They're living in our continent, and they deserve to be better treatment, and they would like to own the future of their country. So they would like to see what will happen. So integration to single market, visa-free regime, something else. And after democratic changes will take place. So this package of support should be short notice, now what they need exactly as we speak, and also strategic support. So we have to think collectively, all of us, or as members of same regional organizations. In Denmark, we are Nordic Baltic also family members, right? So this is also very brand of the group of the countries. We can really deliver a lot. But we also should realize, that would be my final remark, that everything what we are talking here is not just simple economic cooperation projects, or like Eastern Partnership, right? Project, to say as example. This is not technical economic cooperation project. This is also geopolitical nature. We cannot hide this, we cannot pretend it's not happening, because these countries, not all of them, not all 6 members of Eastern Partnership made this choice, but some of them would like to get closer to European Union or to join eventually, which will take time, definitely. It's not so easy, but they made some geopolitical choice, and we cannot pretend that this is just technical. So we have to provide them with the vision as well, and to give them more, those who are ready to take more. Definitely provide this assistance conditionally, given the reforms will be implemented. But this is important to make, because my feeling is that for some of our colleagues, this is kind of nightmare, to have this expansion, this enlargement process, and somebody will join and it will be more headache. But look, we have to agree that process of Europe whole and free by far not yet accomplished. And this is a process, even if it's not final point, membership, right? Membership comes when it comes. It takes time. For Lithuania, it was also not so easy. But the process itself is very helpful. and procedures, thinking, mentality building, and this is very important, not only during crisis but also in the peacetime. So we have to think all together what we can do in order to understand what is happening, because there are other centers of gravity in the world, and they are also not dreaming. They are simply acting, and they are doing not along the lines of international law, sometimes violating that law, and we cannot take it as a reality. We really should do more than we're doing now, and we really potentially can do more.
Thank you so much. I know that you will have to run at some point, and you have passed on the word to your Deputy Minister, who will then answer questions later on. But I hope you will stay on for a bit. Yes. And now I'll pass on the word to Undersecretary of State for Security and Foreign Affairs, Mr. Marcin Przydacz. You'll have to.
Yeah, maybe until the end of the seminar, we'll finally somehow learn how. I know it's not an easy surname, of course, very Slavic. So for our Belarusian or Ukrainian friends, it's not a problem, but for the Nordic countries, sometimes it is. So yeah, thank you very much for having me here and for organizing this interesting webinar. It's very important. To keep the temperature of the interest about the Belarus and what's happening in the region. So I'm also very happy that our Danish friends are also interested in this topic, because we and Mr. Linkevičius already emphasized that we have to work together. We have to keep the dialogue not only with the Belarusian people but also among the EU and NATO members. I mean, it's our direct neighborhood, Belarus, so we have to take into the consideration all what's happening down there and think about the future. So let me just briefly tell you what do we think about the current situation in Belarus. I wouldn't be that much pessimistic as Mr. Linkevičius was. We didn't expect that the change of Belarus would be a kind of short trip. We knew that it will be a long journey. It's not like this that it's just a matter of week that you can change the whole country and the whole mentality. Belarus for the last at least 200 years was under the Russian. Sorry, we have some interruptions. Under the Russian occupation, first the Tsarist Russia, afterwards the Soviet Russia. So the people there are very Sovietized, I would say, unfortunately. But what we could see as a kind of awakening of the nation, finally, after these 200 years, they are fighting for the future of their own country, and then that is a positive sign. That's something very positive, that those people, they want to decide about the future of their own environment, about their own country. Of course, they have a regime. They have Mr. Lukashenko, but I would say that he's weak, and he's weaker every week. And the recent decision of him to resign from the rally of his supporters, it was planned on Sunday. It is an example of the weakness. I mean, he wasn't that strong to show his, the hundreds of thousands of people supporting him. Unfortunately for him, there were not that many people who wanted to support him. And there were hundreds of thousands of people protesting on the street for the new democratic Belarus. So the race of this nation is there, and it has a solid basis, I would say, of people's determination and will. And what is more important, what we can say, that they have leaders. I mean, people keep saying that this movement is leaderless. Not anymore. I mean, the Coordination Council proved to be consolidated and effective in mobilizing people. And the last decision just proved that. And it didn't matter whether they are in Belarus or out somewhere in exile, they can do it. I mean, even from Vilnius, from Warsaw, from other cities, they can do something in their own country. So we have to admit that they are really, I mean, productive in that in their own plan or program. So yeah, that's the picture for today. What are the challenges? I mean, there are several challenges, of course. The first challenge is the what next? Of course, there was the ultimatum, and what the next? I would like to hear from Hanna Liubakova. What's the plan for the future of since she's also in a close cycle of Madam Tikhanovskaya. So what's next? And of course, Belarusian authorities and the Russian authorities that are backing Mr. Lukashenko will try to divide those people, will try to divide the opposition. So the more united they are, the stronger they are. So they need to show all the time that they are united and they cannot be divided. So that's the first challenge. The other challenge is the change of the constitution, which is the deal, which is based on a deal between Putin and Lukashenko. We as Poland, we believe that they need really the constitution to be changed, but it should be changed on, I mean, on the people's rules. I mean, the people should be involved somehow in this process. It cannot be decided. It's not it's not the 19th century that the superpowers will decide what kind of constitution should be in this or the other country. It's not that kind of it's not democracy actually. So the people and the opposition should be involved in a discussion about the constitution of the country. What's the next challenge? The economy, of course. This political instability that which we're facing right now in Belarus is deeply rooted not only in the fact that we have the undemocratic regime, but Belarus is facing the deep economic crisis, not last 2 weeks or 3. It's for the last couple of months. That's why people are so angry, and that's why they are fighting for the change. But the real change, not the ersatz of change. So and being self-isolated, as Mr. Lukashenko decided to be, he's keeping the dialogue only with Moscow. He's self-isolating the country and himself. He will not be able to tackle this very dangerous for Belarus situation. And the last challenge, I would say, it's the radicalization of the people. It is dangerous. So far, those protests are peaceful. And it's good that they are peaceful. Radicalization, I think, will be somehow used by Lukashenko to legitimize massive terror, and by Putin to explain kind of helpful interference, helpful intervention. We are from the Central Europe. We really, I mean, still remember that kind of helpful interventions of our Russian neighbors, and they cannot stabilize anything. I mean, throughout the history, but even in the last 30 years, just look all around the post-Soviet area, and in every single country, there is a kind of frozen conflict which is dealt by Russia. So wherever they are in, it has nothing to do with the stabilization. It's just destabilization of the country. Nagorno-Karabakh, Georgia, Ossetia, and Abkhazia, the Transnistria in Moldova, Donbas, Crimea. The Belarus is the last country without the frozen conflict. But if we allow Russia to be part of this kind of discussion, I'm pretty sure that it will be only destabilization. So just answering the question, of course, we need the dialogue with Russia, since Russia is the neighboring country of Belarus, and we need to talk to them. But please, let's just not believe that they can stabilize whatever in the region, because they proved that they cannot do anything that kind. So about the future, I hope that we'll have a chance to talk during this panel. Yeah, so that's it.
Maybe if I could just ask a follow-up question, and that is, so how are people in Poland actually, not so much on the political side, but on the people in Poland, how are they seeing things in Belarus, and what is the sense? Is there a sense of solidarity, or what's the feeling?
Of course, I mean, we are the country of solidarity, so it's quite obvious for us that whenever we see and wherever we see people fighting for their freedom, somehow the sympathy is on their side. So if you go to the streets of Warsaw or Krakow and ask just common people, they will definitely support Belarusian opposition, Belarusian people. First, because of the fact that we are the country of solidarity, and we also fought for our freedom, and we had to fight the kind of hostile regime very similar to that kind of which is now in Belarus, but also because of the fact, because of the cultural proximity and the fact that we are a member of the same family. Just remember that for the last 600 years until the Russian occupation of the region, we were living in one big country, which was called the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, the country of freedom and tolerance. Didn't matter what kind of religion do you believe in, what kind of God, what ethnicity you are a member of, what kind of nation. So Poles, Jews, Armenians, Belarusians, Ukrainian, Lithuanian, all together living in one country, and it's still somehow deep in our culture and in our, I would say, hearts. So they're very close to us, and when we see somehow our brothers fighting for the future, of course we want to support them, and we as the government, it's quite obvious for us, because I mean 95% of the people in Poland are pro-Belarusian. They want the stable environment all around our country. It's also in our interest. We are the eastern flank of NATO and the EU, and we want to have a stable neighborhood. And I think it's not only in interest of Poland, but also Denmark, Germany, and US, whatever. I mean, all the Euro-Atlantic family.
Thank you so much. I will then ask Hanna Liubakova to provide some comments and hopefully also give maybe a bit of an update on the current ultimatum of towards Lukashenko from the side of the team Tikhanovskaya.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having me. Thank you for organizing this timely discussion. It's really important to kind of keep Belarus in focus. So let me start with the ultimatum and how this kind of idea is developing and how it appeared. So basically, when 2 weeks ago, Svetlana Tikhanovskaya announced the People's Ultimatum, many analysts, many journalists thought that it's just too early, it's not prepared, it's just without any grounds. But the thing is, people kind of were expecting this. They just needed some kind of mobilization because they were tired. The protest became a routine. So Tikhanovskaya kind of expressed their will. And people also thought that it will be really hard to mobilize workers, and because like the kind of this nationwide strike already happened right after the election, and it won't be possible. So basically what the rally on Sunday showed is that, well, that protest was the biggest in the past weeks and basically the biggest in the past month. And I think that it was Tikhanovskaya's ultimatum that played a mobilizing factor. It kind of brought the momentum, and people really began self-organizing. They began kind of printing, these thousands of leaflets and leaving them in neighborhoods all over Minsk and in other cities. And many began joining striking committees. And we were in touch with workers, like with dozens of workers at least a dozen of state enterprises. And many of them were saying that they are ready to join the strike, though they were scared, of course, because of firing and kind of other types of repression, including prisons and intimidation. But I would say that despite all this kind of increased brutality, people showed resilience. And the scale of yesterday's strike surprised me, actually. There were at least 8 major state enterprises where at least some workers went on strike. which is still, given the whole situation, given the whole scale of repressions, is quite a lot. Then we have dozens, at least dozens of private businesses, shops, galleries, cafes that also joined the strike. They sometimes said that they like took a day off, or they just went on vacation or whatever, but still like they expressed solidarity and joined kind of this protest, this strike. Students have been protesting basically for the whole day yesterday, and it continues today. So they are on the streets, they are striking inside universities. So, and yesterday, just for your understanding, hundreds of people were detained, at least 350 people, including workers, who were, some of them were beaten as well. And we keep receiving information that workers are being fired all over the country, at all these kind of major state enterprises. So the nationwide strike is really hard to organize in Belarus, at least without international pressure on those enterprises, right? That often kind of trade with Western governments or companies and so on. I would say that the real ultimatum only begins, and this was not the end. This is kind of just the beginning of this work. And politically now it looks like the protesters and Svetlana Tikhanovskaya and other political bodies that were created, including the Coordination Council, are developing the dynamics of the political situation. It's not the authorities, it's not Lukashenko. They are, like the authorities are only reacting, not vice versa. And Svetlana Tikhanovskaya is sort of imposing the agenda, which is interesting at least, right? And Lukashenko doesn't really know how to behave. So on Sunday, at first the rally was quiet, then it was brutal. He first jails his rivals, then he goes to the KGB prison and talks to them. He first blames Russia, then he considers Russia kind of his own ally and so on. So, and Mr. Przydacz already mentioned this huge rally that was canceled, right? Because Lukashenko, they kind of understood that there won't be enough people. All of this kind of shows that he is, these chaotic decisions only shows how lost he is and how many mistakes he's making. And basically what their position is currently doing, like they are counting on those mistakes of Lukashenko. And it obviously works for their position, but it also works to kind of show his nomenclatura and obviously his security forces that he's not really in control of the situation. Plus, it also works kind of for Russia in terms of like they kind of see him as more and more toxic. And yesterday, when the strikes began, Dmitry Peskov, the Kremlin's spokesperson, said that it's up to Lukashenko to kind of resolve the issue and kind of get the situation under control. So basically, my main takeaway, and I agree with previous speakers who mentioned this, like the society evolved and there is no way back. And this is kind of an only issue of time and resources of the opposition, of civil society and pro-democracy movement. And obviously, well, it's an issue of kind of other domestic factors such as the economic crisis and obviously geopolitical factors such as Russia. But well, Lukashenko won't be able to rule the country where he lost support. And I basically wrote about this before the election. I traveled across the country. I'm a journalist. I reported on the protests, and I basically saw this politicization and this mobilization of people. And I would say that, it's not an issue of kind of higher salaries for people. It's an issue of human rights, of their dignity, of justice. So that's kind of a much more kind of significant issues, right? And it's not possible to appease people by increasing their salaries or, I don't know, whatever, making taxes lower or anything like that. So so Lukashenko is basically relying on security forces, and we know that. And like this is kind of one part of the situation. Now we have the people, and what should be done to support them and kind of not leaving them, making them feel that they are left alone, abandon them. well, the ultimate goal of the opposition is to organize a new and fair election. And I think we, us as kind of part of the pro-democracy movement, but also people want to see the Western countries as partners, as negotiators, as a side that would facilitate the process. And Mr. Linkevičius already mentioned that it was really hard, and I imagine that it's really hard. But how would Lukashenko agree to kind of this new election or these negotiations? Obviously, through both pressure and I would say pressure that would come through through carrots. And now I would explain. By pressure, we mean sanctions, and not only the kind of this list of sanctions. A list of people should be broadened, should be widened, but also it should be more targeted in terms of kind of who groups should be added to the list, like prosecutors at the General Prosecutor's Office, or OMON, riot police, or this GUBOPIK, which is kind of department of the Interior Ministry, and they are really kind of involved in the suppression of the protests. And I understand, and that's kind of the feedback I'm having from those people who are working on the sanction list, is that it's really sometimes hard to provide evidence. And like people on the ground know who is involved in this, but many kind of officers are anonymous, you know, there is really hard to kind of find evidence. And I think this should be taken into consideration, that it just takes time to identify people. Now, when I spoke about carrots, I think we mostly mean like the Marshall Plan, technical assistance. This is not only about how to kind of well, this package of reform and kind of this economic support are very important for the new country, but it will also work and kind of impose, or at least offer an alternative to Lukashenko's nomenclatura, who are currently undecided and they don't know, you know, what sides take. So, so that would also kind of impose pressure through kind of this, right? That his nomenclatura would see an alternative. And I would say, I think we have like a whole list of this expectations or of this kind of suggestions to the West, but it's also important to stop collaborating with the regime, like kind of stop this assistance programs that are used by Lukashenko's regime. I'll stop for now, but I'm happy to kind of explain more.
Okay, I think this whole one issue that I'd just like to clarify is you would like the EU and the Western leaders to actually also be negotiators with Lukashenko. How would that be the EU, Ursula von Leyen, or would that be Merkel, Macron, the Danish Prime Minister? Who would you see, or the Lithuanian? Who would you see being able to carry such a negotiation?
I think it's up to, it should be decided between, I guess, the whole team of Svetlana Tikhanovskaya and counterparts from the EU. But definitely we would see, well, at least some EU countries taking part in these negotiations and at least kind of becoming mediators, right, and facilitating the negotiations. Of course, the kind of the actual talk should be held between representatives of the opposition, and now it might be either Svetlana Tikhanovskaya or representatives of the Coordination Council and representatives of the regime, and not necessarily including Lukashenko, because we don't know what might happen once we reach the stage when these talks are being held. It doesn't have to be Lukashenko, right? So that's how we see it, but we would definitely see support and we would definitely need support and assistance from the EU, from Western countries.
Thank you. So now I'll give the word to Lars Müller from the Danish Ministry of Foreign Affairs for a comment on what he has been listening to. And I'm of course interested in also learning a bit about, you could say, you know, what is the Danish stance, and also how do you see the whole geopolitical situation?
Thank you for organizing this this timely seminar, and thank you for inviting me. It's a privilege to be in a panel with such prominent figures, and I feel quite humble in this regard. Of course, this seminar is very much about the viewpoint seen from Poland and Lithuania, and those two countries obviously are direct neighbors to Belarus. So why the Danish interest? Well, after all, Minsk, the flying time to Minsk is shorter than the distance to Paris. So it really is very much our neighborhood as well. Also, I think to explain the Danish engagement in this, I think there's a wide support in the Danish population for the right to self-determination of the Belarusian people, and definitely for my Minister of Foreign Affairs, Jeppe Kofod, when he explains his development as a politician, and not least with regard to foreign policy. He grew up at the Danish island of Bornholm with the Baltic states just across the waters and Poland. And for him, the struggle for freedom in these countries and the development of ties, of bonds between not least young people in Denmark, in the Nordic countries in Europe, and in Lithuania, Estonia, Latvia, Poland, was determinative for his political viewpoints and perspectives. And he's been following that ever since, with a very much an emphasis on values. For us, the EU is instrumental, and the EU has both the carrot and the stick, as was mentioned by the former panelist. We're very happy that we agreed on sanctions, and here we've been working closely with Lithuania and Poland, and I would like to express my appreciation for their great leadership. Here we have been pushing for the sanctions, also with regard to, for instance, Lukashenko, where there was some of our partners being quite hesitant. But as we concluded, Lukashenko has shown absolutely no will for dialogue, so he had to put on the sanctions list. And we are also ready to support further listings. But of course, the EU being based on the rule of law, we need the necessary evidence. That is what distinguishes our system from some of the systems further east, not least Russia. And then we do have the carrots. We have the possibilities of supporting the Belarusian people. We can do that through the EU, but also bilaterally. And I would like to mention that my foreign minister just has launched a new democracy fund. And the intention there is to be able to support the civil society in Belarus, as we see that as instrumental in creating the necessary platform for a democratic Belarus. And it was also stressed when we had the privilege of having Tikhanovskaya visiting, in fact, Denmark last week, where she met with both my minister, but also the prime minister. She stressed exactly this support to show that we follow developments, but also that we support in concrete terms. And Denmark is very much determined to do so. But I think, again, that together with Lithuania and Poland, we have an obligation to keep this issue high on the international agenda in the EU, in the OSCE, where you have both Russia and Belarus being members, but also in other international fora. And here I'm sure we'll stand together. And then we should work for the necessary support to the Belarusian people. We should ensure that they are not the ones being hit by sanctions, for instance. Anyway, that is sort of the viewpoint here from Copenhagen.
Thank you so much, Lasbo. I just have a follow-up question, and I'll just say that the audience are welcome to put questions in the chat box now, and I'll take them further on. But just if you're to take a bit bigger perspective, you have what's going on in Belarus, but there's a whole European neighborhood. Would you see there is a need to sort of take more discussions, for example, within the OSCE on, you could say, a European security architecture, that we actually have within the OSCE a discussion on how do we want the European neighborhood, including the EU, to work together to be one common, like you could say, when Gorbachev came, he had this vision that you had this peace from the Atlantic Ocean to the Ural Mountains. Would that be something that we should start thinking about again? Because it is as if we are sort of creating new divisions within the EU, within the Europe. It's a bit complicated question, but I just think that somehow a lot of things that's taking place today, you have, as the Undersecretary mentioned, the conflicts in different areas. Is there a need to rethink how we think security and peace within Europe as such, and not only the EU?
Yeah, it's a difficult question, and I do think that whether or not we want to talk about it, some people will have their considerations. Now, I think I should mention that Foreign Minister Jeppe Kofod visited Moscow 2 weeks ago, and he talked very directly with the Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov about the situation in Belarus. It's no secret they did not agree. The problem is if we start how you direct the discussion, because we have different visions. Russia has a vision of spheres of interest that we don't believe. We believe in national self-determination, and that I think is at stake in Belarus. And to be frank, I believe that if we did not have the OSCE with all its faults and weaknesses, we would have to reinvent it. I think it's very much there, but we of course are up against the principle also of needing consensus. So the problem is that security architecture is never stronger than the weakest link, so to say. But I think we believe here that the OSCE is a focal point, is of central importance to a solution to the situation in Belarus, but also in other of the countries in the eastern neighborhood.
Thank you so much. And now I have questions from Maria Eulen to Marcin. So Marcin, why do you think, and I hope you apologize that I use your first name here. Why do you think that the process will become radicalized?
I didn't say that they will. I said that it is a challenge, of course. I mean, when you see people protesting day by day or week by week, and it takes time, and there is no, maybe, I mean, according to their opinion, no progress, it can be radicalized. And I think that's the scenario actually Russia and Mr. Lukashenko are expecting. I mean, to have a smaller group of radicalized people, and they can show to the world that, look, I mean, these people are not ready to dialogue. I mean, we just need to crush them. We just need to use the force to put them to the prison. So I didn't say that it will. It is a challenge for the opposition not to be radicalized. That's my opinion, and I think it's a very problematic thing to Mr. Lukashenko. He really, being a Soviet or post-Soviet, he really doesn't know what to do with those people, you know, marching, protesting with flowers, all elderly people or students were, I mean, just marching or even cleaning the streets after the rally. So it is a complicated situation for him. So I mean, he would feel much more comfortable in a situation fighting the smaller radicalized group of protesters, because that's the Soviet way of doing things. So that was my position, and that's the answer to the question. If I think.
Yeah, and let me also ask you the questions with regard to the, you could say, the wider Europe, because one thing is what is going on in Belarus, but somehow we still have a situation in which Europe is not finally formed, or we have some countries that are going sort of caught in the middle in between the EU and the and Russia today. And when we think about what the vision that we had 30 years ago about a sort of a united Europe, it's quite sad. What can we do? Can we use the OSCE? Can we discuss a new security architecture? What is the stance of Poland in this?
Yeah, of course. Unfortunately, we do have divisions all over the continent, but sometimes we even do have divisions inside the EU, and that's even the worst scenario. I mean, we cannot be divided among the EU member states, and hopefully and finally, and I'm very happy to see that regarding Belarus, we are united. Doesn't matter whether it's Estonia or Portugal, we are all united from the very beginning. The statements of 27 countries, and then the sanctions are adopted by all the countries, and then the Marshall Plan already mentioned by Hanna, the new economic plan for the democratic Belarus. It was all adopted by the all EU members. Of course, about the rest of the continent, we have to work even harder. It's things are not happening by itself, by themselves. I mean, one has to work with them, with those people. I think that for the last 10 years, we forgot about a bit as the European about the eastern dimension, about the eastern region. I mean, we thought that there is a partnership program, so we could give them some scholarships or some funds to the media, and it somehow will. I mean, they will survive somehow. And of course, there is Russia, so let's not bother Russia. Let's not make them angry. While, I mean, the outcome of this it's not very positive, unfortunately, to us. As I said, a lot of unstable, frozen conflicts all over those countries. People fighting for the democracy, for freedom. Maybe not in Belarus, but in other countries with the European flags, being pro-European. So there should be a positive answer from Brussels, from our side. Doesn't matter what Russia thinks. It's not like there are no spheres of influence anymore. I believe in the world. I mean, if the people want to join one alliance or organization, they should have the rights to do that. And the same with the Belarus. If they want to live in a new democratic country, they have the right to do so. To do so, and and our obligation should be to help them. And of course, it's not an easy time. I mean, it sounds a bit naive, but let's just answer to the basic questions, and then let's think about the program, about the scenario, what we can do. Of course, involvement of the OSCE in Belarus would be a positive step, I think. I mean, that's that organization which unites not only the Western Europe, but also the Eastern Europe, even the Central Asia, so all the post-Soviet area. But even for the OSCE, Mr. Lukashenko is not ready, being backed and being supported all the time by Kremlin. So what we need, of course, to understand that Lukashenko is doing what he's doing only because of the fact that he's backed by Mr. Putin, that he got support from Russia, from Kremlin, and that's the worst scenario for Putin, that people will have the force to change the political system in the country, because it's very dangerous for himself in Moscow. Also, I mean, we know what's happening in Khabarovsk and other places, that people really want to do something. So that's why he is supporting Mr. Lukashenko, being very undemocratic in their mentality. They are somehow very similar to each other.
And Hanna, what I'm thinking of and is, I know that the transformation from, you could say, a planned economy, even though, of course, Belarus is not totally a planned economy, but still it has a lot of the elements of a planned economy, to a market-based economy is actually very painful. I know that both for Poland, for Lithuania and Latvia, it took 10 years of poverty for normal people. Are people prepared to go through that process of transformation from planned economy to private economy? Because I guess that is one of the things that actually kept Lukashenko in power, is the security that he provided economically.
Well, that's an absolutely great question. I think this kind of stability, this security, at least in terms of the economy and the economic situation, has been actually eroding in the past 10 years, and that's what people began noticing, began observing themselves. And that's why 3 years ago, a huge protest basically erupted like all across the country, far beyond the capital. And one of the reasons was actually poor economy and this kind of tax on the unemployed. And well, when I traveled across the country and when I talked to people, they were telling me that, well, even if this change for worse, we would like to make the decision. We would like our voice to be heard. And people got so active, and they want to kind of take matters in their hand. That's an absolutely generational change, societal change, and mental change, right? They do not want to kind of be part of this paternalistic culture anymore. So I think that's a great change generally, right? So this is not kind of, they don't expect the state to provide all these kind of basic needs forever. They want to have an alternative. They want to have opportunities as well. And they compare the situation in Belarus with the situation in Poland and Lithuania and other countries, right? And they see the big difference. And if I may just quickly mention, like what kind of, this would require a lot of explanation, a lot of planning, and a lot of work from the side of the pro-democracy movement and Svetlana Tikhanovskaya's team and those who kind of other politicians and other political bodies. And I think what they are now, well, at first there is kind of this movement, and there is an attempt to work on this, on the economic reforms, on the political reforms, and kind of on reforms in other fields such as education and so on. So that's attempt, this kind of work has already started. And when Martin asked me about what comes next, so these kind of like national movement that is being created right now at the moment as we speak, basically it's going to be announced soon, or kind of this like sort of an executive body which is also being created. It's all being done not because of this kind of bureaucracy, kind of, well, we are creating a new body and you guys have to support us. No, it's because like first now these bodies will support, like this executive body will support civil society and will kind of solve issues where regime fails, such as human rights, like all this kind of repression of workers, firings and all of this. Then it will work on the reforms, on the new kind of the new vision of the country, which is very much needed right now. And it will also come in place of those institutions that would basically be kind of not ruined, but they would, I guess, well, the parliament or kind of all these ministries that would have to change when there is a new democratic country. So that's the plan. And I think Martin asked me about that. So I hope that was an answer.
Thank you so much. It's 12 o'clock. So I want to say thank you to Marcin Przydacz, Przydacz and to Hanna Liubakova, and good luck to you in everything that you are going to do. And tak to Lars Bo, and thank you to the Linas and Linas Linkevičius for your participation in this webinar. Good luck to you all. Thank you for today. And thank you to participants listening today and watching the webinar.
Thank you very much. Have a very good day. Bye-bye.